I believe that a sick population is a huge geopolitical threat, not just from a financial and resource perspective, but also from just a will to live perspective. When we're talking about large forces that want to snuff out a people group, sometimes it comes down to who has the will to live, and you don't get to decide in the moment. That is a process of generational cultivation, and I believe fitness is a deep part of that.
Welcome to a bonus episode of This Week Explained. We spend a lot of time on this show analyzing troop movements, supply chains, and the shifting plates of global power. But today, we're looking at a strategic asset that most analysts completely overlook: you. We are currently at a global inflection point. We talk about hard times and strong men, but the reality is that in a world of overstretched systems and volatile borders, your personal health is no longer just a lifestyle choice. It's a matter of national and personal security. When the hospital systems redline and the supply chains falter, the healthy won't just thrive. They will be the only ones capable of standing the line. Now, to help us navigate this, we're joined by someone who operates at the intersection of high-level kinesiology and clinical psychology. He has trained elite operators and is currently deep in research on the mechanics of human performance. He's here to help us spot the fake news in the fitness world, solve the chronic pain that's draining your bandwidth, and explain why bio-individuality is the secret weapon you didn't know you had. All right, welcome Alex VanHouten to the podcast. Alex, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Well, I think a lot of my audience may already know who you are. You've done some work with Andrew Bustamante, which is big in, and I see the Everyday Spy shirt on. It's big in my audience. So love the things that you guys are doing. But for those who don't, could you give a little bit of a background on who you are, what you're doing, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion of today.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that. I am an exercise scientist who gets to represent Everyday Spy and our SpyFit brand. It's been a lot of fun to build that together over the past, it's about 5 years at this point. And Andy actually connected with me 7 years ago when I was running my own fitness company. At the time, it was called Defining Dad Bod. Now you can find all my work on that front under Faithful Fitness. But back then, we were just two dads trying to run a business and talking through how difficult it was as a father to maintain health and fitness while juggling all the things that you need to juggle between sleep deprivation and feeding yourself on the road and finding time to exercise and whatnot. And it was excellent to help him find that for himself. And he said, I haven't had this sort of individualized guidance since I left the CIA. And what you do is just head and shoulders above anybody I've ever worked with from a coaching perspective. And so that for me comes out of a past of 20 years in the health and fitness world, struggling with my own personal genetic disorder that's difficult for me, and also helping my clients make the most of the body they've been given. And so it's been quite a ride where I'm at right now. I just published a book called Faithful Fitness to help people walk through 40 days of getting their faith and their fitness aligned together. And I'm also working toward my PhD on the exercise science and clinical psychology side. I'm particularly interested in how belief changes the physiology of our body.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in there. Top of mind is probably the last thing you said, and how belief kind of changes. So it's and maybe won't get in this too much. I had other questions to start this out, but I really like how you ended that, because those some of the struggles that I have as well in my own health journey. Not that I ever thought I was on a health journey, but it's like, look, I'm a dad as well, running a podcast, which is a business. I am, I'm out doing work for the Department of War, so helping other soldiers. And so it's like physically you need to be up to the task, but mentally you need to be up to the task as well. And so can you kind of try to unpack that sort of how belief and so belief and then your health journey and how that kind of coincides?
Yeah, so I'm gonna tie this together with a study that just blew me away in 2018. And I'm gonna explain it. It's difficult to explain, but if you can wrap your head around it, it will change the way you see your body and the way your brain works with regard to your body. So in this study, what they did, and this is kind of the initial stages of nutrigenomics, where we were investigating individuals' DNA and finding genes that they carried and how that showed up in their body. It's the genotype. That's the fingerprint at conception, your very special DNA sequence that's unique to you, right? And then your phenotype, how it shows up, how strong you are, how tall you are, what your IQ predisposition is, all those things, right? That's all your phenotype. And in the study, what they did is they were interested in how genotype affects individuals in their exercise performance. And then they, like any good psychological study, they had a little twist in here that's pretty powerful. So the first thing they did is they took these individuals and they brought them in and they said, hey, we're going to test your genes. We're going to see if you have the endurance genes with regard to exercise and see how you perform in an assessment of endurance, right? And so that's something we actually know. We can take the Olympic level marathoners and we can test them, and there are these clusters of genes that seem to be really helpful in coding for extremely excellent exercise performance and endurance. Things that seem to code for slightly increased VO2 max, slightly increased mitochondrial density, slightly increased stroke volume of the heart, or greater lung capacity, right? You can imagine how those things would be useful in endurance. And so they took these people and they stuck them on a treadmill. And if you've ever done have you ever done a treadmill exhaustion test? I mean, you were in the military. It sounds like something that
Yeah.
maybe you've gone through.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can do this one of two ways. You can make the treadmill faster until somebody gives up, or you can increase the incline until somebody gives up, basically, right? And so they said, hey, we want you to get on this treadmill. We want you to give us your best effort. We're going to test your endurability. How long will you endure, right? And so everybody's starting at a baseline, right? And so then they also took their DNA sample and tested them for the endurance genes with the goal of bringing them back 6 weeks later and understanding, okay, you had the gene, how did you perform? You didn't have the gene pool, how did you perform, that sort of thing. And so they brought them back, and here's the twist. They retested them and they lied to them about their genetics. So for the people who had the gene and for the people who didn't have the gene, they randomized what they told them. So you bring these people back. Are you following me so far? Because this
Yeah, I
sounds
got it. Yeah,
complicated.
this is
Okay.
super interesting. Yeah.
So now you have four categories of people. You have the people who have the gene and are told they have the gene, so they believe it, right? Not only are they an endurance buff that's built right into their system, right? They believe it. Then you have the people who don't have the gene, and they were told they don't have the gene, right? So they already kind of suck at endurance anyway, but now they believe it. You're like, oh man, I'm bad at endurance. This is where things get interesting. You have the people who don't have the gene, but you tell them they do. So, so genetically speaking, they're not good at endurance, but they believe they are. And then you have the other group of people. Genetically speaking, they have the endurance gene, but you tell them they don't. So as you might imagine, it's not actually very interesting at the polls. If you have the gene and you believe you have the gene, guess what happens? You perform significantly better.
Yeah.
You're like, you're like, like, I'm an endurance boss. Like, I'm not stopping anytime soon. You beat your last record, 6 weeks ago. No biggie. That we expect that. We know that there's nothing special there. I mean, it's cool, but there's nothing special there. And on the same token, the poor guys who don't have the gene, and you tell them they don't have the gene, guess what? They perform worse. Because why would you try, right? Like
Yep.
I don't have the gene. I'm not good at endurance. I hated it to begin with. It hurts and makes me out of breath, and it's stupid, and I don't get the high, all the stuff. So that's not surprising, right? That makes sense in back of the napkin psychology. But things get really interesting right here. So for the people who don't have the gene and are told they do, they performed on average about 20% longer on the assessment than they did previously. Just with the belief like, hey, I can do this. I'm going to go longer, right? And then the people who had the gene, but were told they didn't, they performed at somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% less well than they did 6 weeks ago. Now, that's interesting, but here's where things get even more interesting, because the psychology of it is like, okay, I mean, I guess I get that. Like, if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't, what is that? Yoda? Do or do not. There is no try. Yeah, it's something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We know that, right? But here's the kicker. And this to me, this made, when I read this and I understood it, it made the hair on my arm stand up, and it freaked me out with regard to the time that I've spent with my clients over the years. Because they took another measure, and it's called carbon dioxide buffering. So you actually get to see how much carbon dioxide somebody's able to get out of their body, right? So this is a physiological measure. It has nothing to do, like, you can't make yourself better at carbon dioxide buffering. You can't go, oh, in the same way you can't digest your food faster. You can't sit here thinking like, I wish that chicken would roll through me a little quicker, or I wish it would slow down, whatever end of the spectrum you're on. You can't do that. There's no mind over matter that controls peristalsis in your digestive tract. And in the same way, there's no way you can control carbon dioxide buffering. And this is what got me. In these two groups, in the group of people who did not have the gene, but they believed they did, their carbon dioxide buffering was significantly better than it was 6 weeks ago. The belief that they had the gene gave them the same level of carbon dioxide buffering as the guys who had the gene and believed it. Like, that's crazy. Like, which is more important, belief or genetics? It seems
Two links can be true at the same time, is what I always say.
that's right. That's exactly right. But here's the other kicker: the people who didn't, they had the gene, but they were told they did not. Their carbon dioxide buffering was as bad as the people who didn't have the gene and also believed they didn't. So like, wrap your head around that from a health and fitness perspective. That's just one thing. That's just endurance. But when we start thinking about how belief can change how our body physiologically functions on a daily basis, man, that'll change everything.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And look, there are all kinds of people, myself included, sometimes who are, and it always brings up a story that I like to tell about my time being attached to special operations. And so I was intel for special operations, but I was not an operator, right? I was not a 6'4", 225 guy running around like that. Didn't go through the Q course or anything. And while I was working with them and became good friends with them, I mentioned one time, it's like I could never do what you guys have done. I couldn't get through the Q course. I couldn't get through buds or anything. And one of the guys who's really good friends with, he looked at me and he said, "Well, you've already failed because you've lost the belief that you can. You told yourself you can't, and you're not going to
Hmm.
do it." He's like,
Hmm.
anyone can make it through, barring some, right, some other physiological condition or something. Anyone can do this if
Hmm.
you have the belief that you can do it, right? So that's what I find so fascinating about this.
Hmm. Yeah. So like, exercise and nutrition science, I'm sure we're going to get into some of that. Exercise and nutrition science is fascinating. The way that exercise can be used as an adaptive stressor that changes your body for the better through an epigenetic process. Similarly, nutrition, same way. How nutrition can be used to create adaptations in the body through an epigenetic process that stick around, right? I mean, right, the last 30 years of calorie counting don't shake a stick to what sort of thing we can actually shift and change in ourselves if we use these things like a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer. But when we understand what our belief about identity has to do with how our physiology responds, that's, to me, that's the thing that kind of undergirds this whole piece, right? So you're a dad, right? You know that doing squats is good for your legs, right? This, like, duh, doing
Yeah.
squats is good for the legs, right? But making the space to do that in your life regularly and challenging yourself to do it with more volume or to do it with more intensity or to condition yourself so that you can leap small toddlers in a single bound, right? That that requires, if your kids are important to you, that requires that somehow that practice is related to the identity of good father. Am I a good father? Yes or no? And if your goal is to be a good father, fitness can either be a distraction from that, like, oh no, I have to take time away from my kids to work out, for instance, or fitness can be a supporter, encourager, or even prerequisite for that, right? I want to leap small toddlers in a single bound. That's part of being a good father. Therefore, I will squat more often, right? And that's where this question of belief and identity come into our personal health and fitness practice, because the science can inform us, but it can't tell us who we are. And that's the rub.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Great point. And bringing it into fatherhood, very, you know, astute, timely, in this day and age. And what I kind of think, and why, I mean, we're a geopolitical intelligence podcast that does interviews from time to time. So some of my audience may say, well, why are you talking to this guy about fitness? I think it is a geopolitical risk to a nation's security, national security, to have an entire population that is unhealthy. We're
Mm.
seeing that with standards for the U.S. military maybe going down so we can let more people who are unhealthy. And that means if you don't put those standards down, you're letting less people in, you have a less qualified population, but also the population not fighting in a future global war is going to take up hospital room for those who may need it, that are fighting in those
Mhm.
conflicts. So, my question is, everyone wants like quick wins, right? We want, okay, we see these fitness influencers and they tell us if you just do this 5 minutes a day, you're gonna be, and then it shows you a picture of like Arnold Schwarzenegger from 1970s. It's like you're gonna look like this 5 minutes a day. I'll get you trained up. And then when it doesn't happen in a week or 2 weeks and there's no change, you kind of give up. So
Mm.
we'll talk about the elite clients that you have, but when you're talking to everyday dads like myself, who just want, I don't care, like I've been married 20 years, I don't care about, going to the beach and looking good for women. Like my wife thinks that I'm the most attractive person in the room all the time, and I think she's the most attractive person in the room all the time. I am trying to get healthier, get better for a mental health as well as longevity. So
Mm.
do you deal with clients, like the everyday client who's just like, I want to do this microwave nation, 5 minutes, let's get it done. I want to be shredded.
I 100% deal with those clients, and I'm so sorry. That's not going to happen in 5 minutes. So there's that. But I do want to address something you said there. So one of the products in our SpyFit program is called the Lifetime Athlete, and our demographic is not people who ran the 400 when they were 21 and got gold medals and in their 40s still want to do that. I mean, great. If that's what you want to do, keep at it, have at it. It's an awful race, by the way. It hurts so
Ugh.
bad to run as fast as you can for 400 meters, man.
Oof.
That's tough. I don't have the sprint power gene. That's what I'm trying to say. But so that said, in the Lifetime Athlete, one of the things we talk about is look, athleticism is not just performing at a high level to win a trophy. Athleticism isn't lifting the heaviest weight you can. From a physiological perspective, what athleticism actually is resilience and actually the functional ability to produce and respond to power. So let's say I am a young dad. Throwing my child up in the air and catching them, which by the way brings us a boost of oxytocin because dad gets oxytocin through play, mom gets oxytocin through cuddles. Not a lot of people know that. But dads get this bonding neurotransmitter through play. Throwing my child up in the air and catching them, which is also good for them because that that response of learning how to trust and flexing down their core and laughing and giggling and having a good time, it's good for the kiddo too. That's power. Being able to generate enough force to throw a child in the air is power. In the same way that if you're 72 years old and you trip over a pair of shoes in the living room and you're about to hit the ground and you put your hands down and catch yourself with your muscles and in your pectoral muscles, your deltoids, your triceps, your core, you don't break any bones because you have power, the ability to decelerate you against gravity, right? That's an athletic trait. That's an actual athleticism when we talk about the biomechanical process of the body, right? So what I want individuals to understand is if they're working toward doing literally anything in their life, it's going to require athleticism in their body, not being able again to jump super high or throw huge heavy weights over their head or whatever, but to be resilient, to be able to produce power, to be able to prevent injury, right? And an athlete, if I see myself as an athlete, then I will feed myself differently. I will make room for exercise in my life. I will make some decisions about my rest and recovery that other people won't even think about, right? And in that sense, that comes back to that identity question, because I completely agree with you. I believe that a sick population is a huge geopolitical threat, not just from a financial and resource perspective, but also from just a will to live perspective. When we're talking about large forces that want to snuff out a people group, sometimes it comes down to who has the will to live, and you don't get to decide in the moment. That is a process of generational cultivation, and I believe fitness is a deep part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we train SEER specialists for, the will to live. And that goes from the survival aspect, so getting out into the desert or the forest and just surviving for a time, that evasion of, the evasion is the will to survive because I'm evading an enemy. It comes a point where your mind goes, do I even care anymore?
Yeah.
Like, should I just give up? And but you said a very interesting thing, which popped into my head. The scene from The Matrix, right, where Keanu Reeves is Neo, and he's asking, "Oh, can I dodge bullets?" And the response was, "No. Just know that when you need to, you won't have to." So I was kind of thinking through this, like when you get pushback from people who are like, I'm going to want donuts. I am going to want all of those treats and that serotonin that comes from food. And they say, will I ever give up all of this stuff? Do you ever kind of tell them, bring that Neo and go, it's not that you're going to give it up, but when the time comes, you're not going to want it anymore, is how I see that.
I love that. I might be a little more manipulative psychologically speaking. Well, and this is an important thing about nutrition. And so we don't just eat because it's good for us. We don't just eat for nutrition. We don't just eat for our metabolism and whatnot. Sometimes it's actually a big social thing. Sometimes we eat just to connect with people. Sometimes we eat for the pleasure of it, right? And then sometimes people eat to regulate their emotions. So there's a big spectrum of reasons people eat things, right? And the question I'll get from somebody is, okay, look, I'm trying to get more healthy. I'm trying to do these things, but do I have to give up donuts forever? Like, is that a thing? You're like,
Yeah,
oh
that's
no,
always
no
the
donuts.
question.
Yeah, do I have to give up donuts? And my short answer is no. But if you understand who you are and what you're doing, then your your interest in donuts needs to align with the goal, right? So as a short answer, hey, all those extra carbohydrates and all that extra fat and all that processed uh, folic acid enriched flour, which if you have the MTHFR genetic mutation, it's not going to be good for you. Anyway, if you know who you are and you know what you're up to, and you're like, man, donut sounds great. For me, I'm going to share donut with my kids. I love donuts. I think they're great. I don't eat them a lot, and I eat them on leg day because I'm going to go nuke my legs. I'm going to wear out all the glycogen stores in my body. I'm going to put myself into an adaptive state where I need that extra carbohydrate, that extra fat. And then we're going to go have donuts. And what's great is in that state, it doesn't make a huge negative impact on my pancreas. It goes to helping me adapt and grow from what I just did, right? And so oftentimes I'll tell my clients, I won't use the Neo thing, although I kind of like it. Say, no, you won't have to give up those things forever, but they'll be a part of your program and you'll have earned them. And that's the difference. That I want those things that we enjoy for pleasure, those things we use for social connection. I want those things to serve our health and fitness, not to pull away from them. And for some people that means you will eat a lot less donuts than you currently do. But when you do eat donuts, it won't be hurting you. It'll be helping you.
Yeah, you brought up something that, again, very interesting in the way that you talked about. Like, I am talking to you about health and fitness in a physical look at the way I look. And I think that's how most people think about their physical state.
Mhm.
But I would say everyone maybe younger than 50. And I'll just hit 50 because I'm not 50 yet. So I'll say everyone younger than that probably cares physically what they look like. Um, but you were talking in the internals, right? So like the pancreas and what it does to your liver and your kidneys. And a lot, I think, do you have some difficulty with kind of invoking that or telling that to people because they can't see it, right? Unless it's they do blood work and then the doctor sits with them and says, look, you got some issues here, vitamin D deficiency, all of these things, you're going to need to do something.
Mhm.
You're coming at it from, yeah, it might make you look better, this training program that we're going to do, but what's really going to happen is inside you're going to feel better. You're going to feel the way you feel when that donut hits your body, right? That
Mhm.
serotonin, that the dopamine that hits. I know this because I don't like to go to the gym, but I go to the gym. But immediately afterwards, the dopamine hits, and it's like the music you're listening to sounds better. The world around you looks better, it smells better, and all of that. I would assume is from a physiological stand, the internals that are happening in your body.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to unpack there. Really, two things I want to hammer down on. When I work with individuals, oftentimes by the time they get to me, they have already chased that I want to look good fast way of doing things. And not everybody, but some of your listeners might not have run that gambit yet, and it's your journey. Have at it if that's what you want to do. But I work in the health and fitness world. I meet all sorts of people. I used to work with bodybuilders. And these are the kind of they were the image of masculinity at one point. Some people think the big muscles are gross and some blah, blah, whatever. But imagine this image of a perfect male body, whatever that is. And I got to meet one of these guys and I was doing, I did his blood work and we walked through some things. And this guy was, 22 years old, 6'9", just built, great lats. He's got great symmetry through his abdominal muscles, giant legs. He's got this pretty girlfriend next to him. we do his blood work and he sits with me and he says, "Hey, what's it looking like?" And I said, "Dude, his HDL was so low, like in the 20s, which is not good. It's not good for your heart. It's actually indicative of several hormonal issues. For somebody who lifts weights as much as he does and looks as healthy as he does, his HDL should at least be in the 70s, at least somewhere in there. Heart protective, great hormonal system. His testosterone was below 100, which for a man in his 20s is like almost 10% or less what he should have.
Oof. Wow.
And I said, dude, you your blood work looks like you feel miserable. He's like, I do. I'm so miserable. He was depressed. He was on several different medications. He was looking into testosterone replacement therapy. And from the outside looking in, if that guy walked across the gym, every other guy's looking at him like, man, I want to look like him someday. You know, like I'm lifting my weights to look like that dude, right? And and he told me, he's like, I haven't had sex in a month. Not because my girlfriend's not interested, but my body will not. I can't.
And he's
And
probably
so
not interested mentally.
exactly. So he had gotten himself to a place where from the outside looking in, everything looked, I mean, before AI could generate the perfect male body, I mean, he's pretty close, you know.
Right.
And but he wasn't even able to enjoy it. He wasn't even able to embody it. He wasn't even able to appreciate it because he had worked so hard through bodybuilding to get it to look a certain way that his body was just crying for the necessary nutrients, the fats, everything that it needed in order to be a healthy young man. And you know, I remember him very often when people tell me they want to look a certain way. And that's fine. I get it. I get it 100%. What I want individuals to understand is I want who you are on the inside, physically, but also who you are in your identity. I want that to be on the outside because the truth is on the other end of the spectrum too. Individuals who have, you know, 200 extra pounds of fat on their body and they're like, I just want to look strong. Like I want to be the fat guy. I don't want that. And I get it. I completely understand. I think those are very redeeming desires. And so what I do oftentimes when I work with people is I ask them to do this thought exercise, and I would encourage you and your listeners to do the same. You might not do it in this conversation. You can pause and do it for yourself, but ask yourself this question. If I did everything right over the next year, 1 year from now, if I did everything right, I'm sitting here in in spring 2027. If I did everything right, what's the best that could be? Who am I? What's that look like? What's the best that could be? And picture it, draw a picture, write it down. And in the same way, you can ask the same question. If I did everything wrong a year from now, what's the worst that could be? What's the absolute most terrible place that could be? I'm still around a year from now. What's that look like? And you can draw a picture, you can write it down. And what you'll find is neither of those pictures has you standing in front of a mirror going like, look at me. I'm so beautiful. Uh, that might be a part of that, but it's not all of it. And that's the thing. Uh, Individuals have to understand that this body you're in is the only one you get. And as many years as the good Lord gives you moving forward, it's going to be with you. So what you do will either help you to feel better, perform better, enjoy yourself more, be more who you are, and maybe even look better at the same time,
Yeah.
or degrade you faster. And those are the options because we're fighting entropy and you don't get a say in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, have you ever dealt with someone who either going back to the belief system, believed they were at the point of no return, or they were at the point of no return? I guess that's two questions. You know, how do you talk to someone who believes they are at the point of no return? I probably think up some answers for that,
Mhm.
but how someone who literally is at the point of no return. and this
Mhm.
is their last chance that they get. What are those
Yeah.
interactions like?
Yeah. Well, for me, when I get to that place with somebody, for me, the faith hat has to come on because there's no other way I know how to speak to that without invoking some deeper belief system for myself and and appealing to that in somebody else. And so, I mean, it's a very simple question. The way you're acting, you're done. You think you're done. And if that's it, fine. But we don't have any more work to do together at this point. And that's
Yeah.
fine. Like that's your choice. But if you're not done, I need you to understand something. God's not done with you yet. And if that's true, if you still have days, then our goal here is to finish well, whatever that looks like. And I have a client I just got to work out with who 3 years ago he had his second heart attack and he was he's in a he's in a it was a really rough spot, man. But he'd had so much work done on his back, so much work done on his knees, in pain all the time, early 60s, not somebody who you would expect to start a fitness journey. And he was with me and he was like, Alex, this feels kind of like a Hail Mary, but can you help me? And I said, well, let's spend some time together. Let's see what you're willing to do and we'll make a decision together. And he said, I've been in and out of doctors. My rap sheet is he gave me like a 30-page medical record. He's like, they really don't know what to do with me. So that's fair. I completely understand. And so when we first started working together, he couldn't walk down my driveway 40 yards. He couldn't walk down my driveway.
Wow.
It was impossible for him. It was painful. It was difficult. He was in a pretty rough state of depression. He was on a lot of medications at the time. And actually, at one point, I had to stop our training, write a letter to his cardiologist, and tell him, I believe there's a problem. I need you to do some imaging because he's not adapting to exercise in the way he should. And turned out he actually needed three blockages open back up that
Wow.
that had accumulated and were weakening his heart. So long story short, I'm going to fast forward to the happy part. 3 years later,
Thank you.
uh, three sorry, he was in a rough spot, and I've worked
Yeah.
with a lot of people like this. 3 years later, he he's lost 60 pounds. That's not why he's in better health. It was a byproduct of getting things right. He can now hike 6 miles without stopping, which is fantastic. Since then, he had his first grandbaby, and he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "This is what it was training for. I just didn't know it." And he gets to be an active part in his family's day to day. And to this day, we still work together, and he's still growing and climbing out of that terrible hole for himself. But it's the same question, whether you're a 60-year-old man who's been through heart attacks and lots of work, or maybe you're a lady who's wrestling with an autoimmune disorder or a traumatic brain injury or something like that, and you're just like, man, if I keep going this road, I'm done. I know it. When you see the fork in the road, the question is God done with you yet? Are you ready to throw in the towel? Because if you are, I'm so sorry. There's nothing else you can do from a health and fitness perspective that's going to help you. But if you've decided you're going to finish well, maybe the finish line's further than you think it is, and you just take it a day at a time.
Yeah, that's an inspiring story. I think anyone who's listening, um, who may be more like me, who is like, I'm not there yet, but I could see myself talking about in the next year. It's maybe not in the next year, but the next 5 years. Where are you at if you just keep doing what you were doing,
Mm.
in the last year, being depressed and being physically just not wanting to do things, right?
And I don't want to interrupt your thought there, but I think this is why the draw of the promise of the fitness industry is so powerful, because it's always this little thing. Take this pill, do this exercise, uh, subscribe to this channel, whatever it is. It's always this
Please
little
do
thing.
subscribe to this.
Yeah, yeah. Please subscribe to this channel. He's not overpromising. But this little thing will make a big difference if you just do that thing, right? The reason that's so powerful is because it's true. It's just that the the focus is wrong. So if you decide I'm not done, I'm going to finish well, I'm going to move forward because I see the fork in the road. I see it. I'm not going to be a part of the geopolitical national security threat of being terribly unfit and out of shape and not knowing who I am and what I'm doing about it, right? Or I'm going to be a good dad, which whatever floats your boat, I don't care as long as you stop giving up. The 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 next step forward is a small thing. It's not a big thing. You don't have to change everything all at once. It is a small thing, but it's not usually the small things that the fitness industry tells you that if you buy those things or do those things, it's going to make a difference. I call it the 1%. It's the 1%. What is the 1% that I can shift or change now? That might not make a huge difference tomorrow, might not make a huge difference a month from now. But if I keep doing that, if I keep moving forward that 1%, and I do it every day, I move forward a little 1% every day. I build consistent habits. I change things that really matter, even the small things. And I do that over time. The results compound in a way that you will reach a point where you look back and have like nothing but gratitude for how far that's taken you. And you won't be able to point to any one thing. Oh, it was the detox pill that I bought. Oh, it was that Alex influencer trainer and I bought his program, that changed everything. I'm still doing it to this day, It's the 1%. When you have decided you're not giving up, when you've decided that you're going to move forward, you look around at your life and say, all right, what's one thing I need to start? I'm not doing it right now, but I know it. Down in my soul, I know it. I know I need to start doing that. And then you look around and say, what's one thing I need to stop? And that's your 1%. Do that. And then tomorrow, do it again. And then tomorrow, do it again. And then tomorrow, do it again. And it's so crazy how compounding interest works. And I've been preaching this long before the Atomic Habits book. This is this has been this has been how I've been training my clients for 20 years because really I remember as a young trainer, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed thinking, "Oh man, if we just had the best exercise program, if we just had the best nutrition program, everything would be good." And I would hand these people these beautifully painstakingly non-AI, because we didn't have it at the time, programs. Here, do this. Just do this. It will change your life. And nobody does that because it's too many things all at once. You got to know. You got to know what your 1% is.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all normal, regular people, right? I think a lot of the complaint sometimes is we have this vision of what the perfect human body looks like. Perfect on a man, perfect on a woman. And that is usually through the lens of Hollywood or magazines and people who have cooks and personal trainers and
Yep.
all of these kind of things. And you said something that I was hoping that we would get into, which is that 1%, right? So even for myself, if I take an U-Bahn stop that is one stop before my apartment, I get an extra kilometer of walking in. If I take a different, if I go up the stairs to get to somewhere rather than not do it at all, um,
Hmm.
I have taken those stairs, and oh, by the way, I have to get down those as well. So we're not just talking about up, but we're talking about compounding down the stairs as well, getting that extra workout in. I have 5 minutes. The floor's clean enough. Let's do some push-ups. I got nothing else that I'm doing. Why sit here and be bored? Um, so I love that you got that across to everyone. Just do that extra. It's 1%. We're not talking about, hey, let's put another plate on the bar and try to
Hmm.
max out this workout. That's a year from now. Let's work our way up to that. But it also brings up that's the 1% that we can do, but you train the 1%, you know, operatives, special operations. So you're kind of on the both of those scales, right? The people who are at their wits' end and they're at the very end and they need belief. And that's one training program.
Mhm.
How do you develop a training program for the elite operators? Is it
Hmm.
similarly focused in belief in what they can do, or are you looking to push them more than you would someone else?
It's a great question. So the the 1% have already figured out the 1%. If that
Yeah.
if that sentence makes sense now,
Yes.
so because when you're working with an elite operator, usually you don't have to dig into their questions of belief. To be an elite operator, they've already honed that. They know who they are. They know what they're doing with themselves. The question is, how do they optimize that? How do they how do they arrange what they've already done in their world to find the 1% things that will change them, right? I'll give you an example. So one of the things I like to do with my elite operators is I do like to do a nutrition genome panel. So I want to see, again, you and I, we have different genomes at conception. We have these genotypes. We share most of that. Like as Homo sapiens, you and I have 99.9, I don't remember the number. It's a lot of that is shared, right? We both have 5 fingers, both have 2 ears, that we share much of our genome, but we differ in some small ways that matter. And those differences are not something you can see on somebody very often. Like maybe you can see their eye color, or maybe you can see their hair color, or how tall they are, right? But some of those are hidden differences that change the way I should exercise and recover, and that change the way that I should feed myself versus you. And this is why it's such a gosh, the nutrition landscape in this world is like a religion. Like you can even be a
Absolutely.
carnivore. You can be a carnivore who thinks everybody in the world would be way better off if they just ate steak. And don't get me wrong, there are some individuals who, genotypically speaking, will do great if that's the only food they ever eat. And then there are these vegan people, and no offense if you're one of them, but there are these vegan people who are like, if everybody would just stop eating animals and torturing things that are living and whatnot, and just ate plants, everything would be great. You'd live longer, you'd be happier, you lose all your hair, and I'm just kidding. Yeah, but and what's interesting is individuals who have experienced nutrition changes in their life that transformed them, made them feel better, made them look better, made them operate at a higher level, have had their eyes opened in a way that is almost religious. Like they've had their eyes open in a way that's almost spiritual to them because they're going, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could feel like this. I didn't know this was possible, right? And so then what do you do when you have your eyes open, spiritually speaking? You proselytize. You think everybody
Yep.
should do this. You should be a vegan, and you should be a vegan, right? And you come up with all your arguments and stuff, but really at the end, at the base of it, it's bioindividuality. What works for my body optimally might not be what's best for your body optimally. There's going to be a lot of similarities. We're both human, right? But there's going to be some significant differences too. And those differences, that's where I like to start with my elite operators because they have understood the value of exercise. They've understood the value of locking in their nutrition. Discipline's not a problem for an elite operator. In fact, sometimes they need to rest. Like they're just going all the time, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, Andrew Bustamante. Um, but it's elite operators don't get there because they don't understand discipline and following a plan and program. It's that how do I use what we now know about exercise and nutrition science to optimize my drive? How do I do that? And so, as an example, and I know I've talked a lot, but I want to use a concrete example that's useful for people. I referenced the MTHFR gene earlier. The MTHFR gene is the gene that regulates whether or not you're capable of turning folic acid into methylfolate. Now, if you don't understand nutrition science, that's okay. I'm not going to be really annoying about it. I just want you to know your body can use methylfolate. It can't use folic acid. And there's a small percentage of the population who can't convert folic acid to methylfolate. they're incapable. They're bad at it. And so what happens is in our world where many developed countries have started enriching things with folic acid, that's generally great for most of the population. But for a small percentage of the population, folic acid just builds up and builds up and builds up and actually can create that global inflammatory response. It can actually create migraines. It can actually create uh, uh, immune system dysfunction and make you more prone to infections and whatnot. It can actually cause joint inflammation because of the immune system response. And I know that because I'm one of those people. My body does not convert folic acid into methylfolate very well. And so there was a time in my life where I ran a marathon and I fueled the whole thing with breakfast cereal. And I don't recommend breakfast cereal in general. Great source of cheap carbs for a college student, right? but
Absolutely, yeah.
but breakfast cereal in the US has tons of folic acid in it. And I was sick most of the time and I had no idea. And so having come on the other side of that and understood my personal genetics better, as an elite operator, I can cut that out of my world and find a different source of cheap carbohydrates when I need it that doesn't introduce a chemical into my body that my body just can't handle. And so helping my elite operators understand those things is really step one for the people that I work with.
Yeah, that's super interesting because now you're talking about getting into the weeds of, you know, w- we and I talked about this before we started and started recording, but sort of like the DNA diet and like what is or the blood, like your blood type diet, right? And how the things inside of your body are going to affect what you will do on a day-to-day basis and how you can
Okay.
perform.
Yes.
Um, so it's kind of and going from the beginning where we started the belief system of even though your body doesn't have all of this stuff, you can believe that it can do certain things to now identifying, okay, these are the inherent issues that I have. I'm not an elite athlete. I am not. But I can do some elite things. So
Hmm.
how do you actually make those changes stick, both for the 1% who are trying to do 1% better than the day before, right?
Hmm.
Be
Hmm.
better than who you were the day before. You never have to be perfect.
Right.
And then the elite people who are doing the 1% for their own. How do you make those changes stick? Because you're not there 24/7 unless you do put, Andrew hasn't said anything about this. I don't know if you're putting cameras or if he's putting cameras in everybody's houses
I'm
to
not at liberty to discuss everyday spies, a covert operation. I'm just kidding.
got it. We'll delete it. We'll take that out of the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. Please scratch that. I'm just kidding. So I'm glad you said that. Actually, joke first, and then real life. I have many of my clients who joke that there is a little Alex on their shoulder, a little Coach Alex that's like, are you really gonna eat that? Are you serious right now? Or like a little Coach Alex who's like, is that really as hard as you can run? Like, stop being a pansy. So so I don't know how that works. People don't pay me for that. So whatever that is, that seems to be a real phenomenon. But that question is it actually comes back to what makes exercise science and nutrition science work. And that's this idea of epigenetic adaptation and how we bring that about. So so I'm going to be annoyingly complicated for a second and then I'll make it simple. So like if you
Perfect.
don't like annoyingly complicated, plug your ears and la 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 for a second, but we'll get simple. Epigenetics is the study of how our genome responds to stress. And it's really cool because just because you have the gene for something doesn't mean that that's expressed in you. You actually have the ability to turn on and turn off genes. That's called methylation. When you turn on a gene, your body can your body can turn it on. And when you can turn off a gene, that's called acylation. And we actually know that we can create epigenetic changes in the body through different stressors, right? So on a positive side, hypertrophy, muscles, hypertrophy is the growth of tissue. It's the oversizing, hyper meaning over, trophy meaning growth, the oversizing of muscle tissue. We know that if we do 3 to 5 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions at a moderately high weight of a compound exercise like bench press or lat pull down or leg press, right? We know that if we do that, it will trigger hypertrophy. It will make the muscle grow over time. And there are limits to that, but you can actually take somebody who doesn't have a lot of muscle tissue on them, and after 12 weeks of weight training and adequate nutrition, because you got to feed the beast, you can create muscle growth. That's hypertrophy. What's crazy is you can actually test that person years later, and even if they've stopped training, and even if the muscle tissue has gone back down to its normal dormant size, the epigenetic changes that you created to turn on that muscle growth are still there. And so if you retrain that person, they actually their body works hard, their immune system works hard to rush back to their previous level of fitness is with regard to how large their muscles are. And that's why my poor 40-year-old dudes who were like, yeah, I was an athlete back in my 20s, and we're like, okay, great, we're going to start working out. Your first week is going to suck horribly. They're like, oh, it's not a big deal. I used to do way heavier weight. And they're just so sore. Like, yeah, what did you do to my legs? Like this, I don't know why, but this is the kind of text that makes me sleep better at night. Alex, I hate you. I can't sit on the toilet. You suck. But I'm not done. Something like that. Like, sweet. Yeah, and we got another one. We got another one. And that's good because what's happening is their immune system is working hard to adapt them back to what the changes they have already created were. That's epigenetics, right? So I know that was complicated, but now let's boil this down to how this works for both ends of the spectrum. It's really simple, actually. Consistency, volume, and intensity. Consistency of the stressor, the volume of the stressor, and the intensity of the stressor. This is actually where people really get messed up in the fitness world. They try to flip the order.
Yep.
They try to do intensity first and then try to add a little volume and then try to be consistent. That's not how the body adapts. That's not good. It's only going to end in injury and burnout and lack of ability to adapt. It's consistency first. Then you up the ante on how long something is, or how many repetitions you do, or how much of your day it requires. And then intensity. Intensity is how heavy something is, how little rest you get in between, how much of a thing that you do on top of itself, right? That's intensity. And so that's how I help these individuals create those changes, regardless of what end of the spectrum they're on. We find the 1% that they can actually move forward on, and we get consistent at that. And then with that consistency, we can grow volume. And then with that volume, we can grow intensity. I'll use your example, if you don't mind, of dropping yourself off early so you can get a kilometer in.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that every day this week is consistency. Dropping yourself off 2 stops before, then 1 stop, is volume. Dropping yourself off and jogging for 30 seconds and then walking and then jogging for 30 seconds and then walking, that's intensity, right? So what most people do is like, you know what? I'm out of shape. I want to get in better shape. I heard running's great cardio. Seems to help with the genes. I don't know. Anyway, I read something. So I'm going to drop myself off a stop before, and I'm going to run as hard as I can. And that's great. It feels good until 3 days from now, when your body, your ligaments and tendons, your brain, everything's like, what are you doing? Like, yeah. Come on, man. So consistency, volume, intensity. That's how we create change that adapts us for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you've just told me to now go 2 stops since I've been doing the 1 stop. So I'll get right on that. I'll let you know how that
volume,
how that works out. I'll add the volume to it. But I also think you kind of just wrapped up right there. And we could talk probably for hours and hours, but I'll be a good steward of your time, and my time as well. But that, uh, this is one of the more interesting conversations. And I always say, you've been a great guest, blah, blah, blah. But I don't usually say this is one of the most interesting conversations that I've had, especially something not dealing with what I usually deal with in the geopolitical realm of intelligence analysis and stuff like that. But I also think that it is one of the more important conversations to have outside of, will China invade Taiwan? What is that going to look like? Will US strike Iran in the next few weeks? You'll hear
Mhm.
that on my podcast week by week. But what you
Yeah.
won't hear is how you can become a national security threat by not, it's not getting, being a physical specimen. It is just by being able to get out of bed without a 9 on the pain scale and moving so that you're not put into a hospital that someone else is going to need to take, or taking doctors away from the front lines because they need to deal with a society that is not in shape. We're not talking about overweight or anything like that. We're talking about just not a healthy people
Mm.
in what we consume. um, that's both mental, what we consume on social media, talking about these fake influencers who are trying to get us healthy tomorrow. But
Mm.
I rambled on a little bit there, and I don't know where I was going with
Well,
that.
I actually really like that message. If you don't mind, I'd like the opportunity to kind of add some redemption in there as well.
Absolutely.
And uh, there are very large, very important things happening in the world. And as an individual, it's easy to feel like they're beyond you. This is something that you are an agent in. You do have ownership of what goes in your mouth. You do have ownership of how you use your body, whether walking down a driveway is hard or you can jump over toddlers. You do have ownership of how you rest and recover. You do have that ownership. And what I hope to get across to individuals when we think about the world of health and fitness and exercise science and nutrition sciences, you are an agent. You really can take a 1% step, and you really can do that consistency. You really can grow volume. You really can grow intensity at whatever level you're starting. And when you see all these big forces moving and stuff, there's this deep desire to do something. And don't get me wrong, there's all kinds of things you can do, but one of the most important things you can do is to take good care of the body you've been given. That does everybody a favor, including yourself.
Absolutely. I'm glad you circled back. You redeemed my commentary there, so I do appreciate that. But a few more minutes. I just want to give you time to. You said you were working on a book, got a book coming out. I definitely want you to let everyone know how to do that. And for those 1%ers who are listening, both on both spectrums, how do they get in contact with Alex? How can they change their life through your models?
Awesome. Thanks for that opportunity. So the book's called Faithful Fitness. It actually just published a week ago. So I'm very excited about it. It's from a Christian perspective. I've worked hard to take what I understand about exercise science and nutrition and have used in my clients and walked people through a 40-day journey, which if you're from a biblical mindset, 40 days is extremely important. A 40-day journey of getting your personal body aligned with your faith journey. And it's a book about identity. It's a book about cutting through the noise of the nutrition and exercise world. It's a book that challenges those notions of why we even do this. Why would it matter at any sort of existential level what you do with your body? And it's well, I spent a lot of time and energy writing it. My boys, I've got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. They're like, "How long did it take you to write this book, Dad?" And in many ways, it took me 30 years to write it. It took me 30 years to write it. But the actual amount of time that I wrote it in this season of my life, it was quite the labor of discipline and love to take that much time from business and from family and whatnot to pour out in this. But for me, I've been working with people for a long time, and I know that knowing what to do but not doing it is the hardest struggle that individuals I work with face. And this book works to address that. It's a process for sure, but that's how health and fitness is. It's a journey. So that's the book, Faithful Fitness, a 40-day devotional for health and stewardship. And to get connected with me and my programs in Everyday Spy, we call our program Spy Fit. We have everything from personal one-on-one coaching, so individuals, it could be elite operators, or if you're making that decision about whether or not you're giving up. We work with individuals at that level to be bio-individual in their program, but we also run a series of challenges to help individuals learn these things. For instance, the Spy Fit Lean and Mean, we worked hard for 8 weeks to teach our body how to burn fat as a fuel source. Not just to lose fat as fast as possible, but to teach our metabolism to adapt such that we can tap in to this fuel source that many bodies aren't tapping into. And we have several challenges like that that we run throughout the year. There are group challenges, very, very powerful. I love the community of Everyday Spy. Andrew Bustamante does a great job of attracting a very cool, very eclectic, very headstrong, and I say that with love, group of individuals. I'm happy to be a part of it. And you can find the links to our work with Everyday Spy below.
Thank you so very much. And usually I will end these and I will tell the audience to stay safe out there. But I think after this conversation, what I want to end on is the great words of the former head coach for the NC State basketball team, Jimmy V, who said, "Never give up, never ever give up." And I think that's a good point to end on today. Thank you
Um,
so much, Alex.
Thanks for having me, and thank you guys for listening.